morning and welcome to our channel. Today we are going to be doing the Q&A. A week or two ago we announced what the addictions were and you guys had a lot of questions, so we thought that we would sit here, answer some of your questions. If we don't get through all of them in this video, we will have a part 2. Just a disclaimer, this video is going to have a lot of personal information. It might be triggering for some of you, so if you guys don't want to hear about infidelity or PTSD, things like that, click out of this video. If you want to kind of understand more of our story or where the questions are coming from, our other videos are linked in a playlist labeled addiction. So there's that. Okay, so the first question is, how did you find out about his addictions? And did you stay in the relationship after finding out or separate from him as soon as you knew? It's kind of hard. Okay, so I'm going to kind of just take it back to the very beginning, kind of explain some things. A lot of the in-between I don't remember because it seemed like every week or every month that there was something new coming out. I was learning more. We were dealing with so much other stuff that it's kind of all just a blur back then. I think I blocked out a lot about it for like a year or so. But I'm going to kind of take you back to the very beginning when I found out. 2 months into our marriage, we were driving down this road. We like to go for rides in the car all the time. And we were driving down this road, and I just had this feeling, I don't know where it came from, he's cheating on you. And I was like, no, he's not. Like, this person couldn't be cheating on me. He's with me all the time. There's no locks on his phone. Like, he gives me his phone all the time. We don't have any secrets. We talk about everything. Like, it's not possible. And then the feeling just kept getting stronger and stronger. I started feeling kind of sick, so I'm like, maybe this is just me from past relationships feeling like this, or maybe I'm just paranoid, maybe I'm just weird, something's wrong, you know? And it just didn't go away, didn't go away, didn't go away. There was other kind of red flags in our relationship, such as he started to act different when it came to being intimate and stuff, to where he couldn't, or he didn't really want to, and it was just kind of a weird situation where I was like, I don't know, it could be nothing, probably nothing, but that feeling wouldn't go away. So finally I looked on his phone, there's messages maybe to like 20 different women, and I immediately just thought, I'm done, I'm not dealing with this, I know how bad this can get. So I began to pack my stuff, and I wasn't going to tell him, I was just going to call my dad, have him come down and get me, and just leave, and be done with it. But this was only 2 months into our marriage. This was like 2 months into our marriage. Everything had been absolutely perfect except for this. And I just was going to do it anyways. Because I was like, I don't want to be cheated on. I don't want to deal with this. So I began to pack my stuff. When he was at work, he came home and I tried to act like completely normal, happy, like nothing's wrong. He picked up on that like right away. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And so finally I was like, are you cheating on me? No, no, no. Finally it came out and he just started bawling, like crying. Said he'd do whatever he could just to make this better, to get me to stay. And so I thought, you know what? He hasn't been in a relationship before. We hadn't talked about this. Yes, this is really bad, but we could also grow from this. Like, if we were able to get over this roadblock, our relationship could be much better. I'm going to give him a chance. So he wanted to change things around right away, and so he kind of did. Or I thought, like, it seemed like he was trying. It seemed like he was extremely remorseful, and so I decided to give it another chance. I don't remember when I found out that it was a pornography addiction. I don't remember at all. But it was again and again and again. It was either, you know, pornography, that was the problem, or talking to other women. There were kind of mixed reviews from people that I heard, whether they stayed or they left for things like that. And I thought, you know, it hasn't crossed into physical yet. Maybe we should try this and this and this. And every time I think of a different idea, oh, we didn't try this therapist, or we didn't try this idea, or, you know, maybe I wasn't being as nice to him. You know, different ideas crossed my head, so I stayed. It was always in the back of my mind to maybe I would leave. After I had Sparrow, I was planning on leaving. My parents came down, packed my stuff. I was going to leave the next day. My mom ended up talking with Cody, and it was just this immediate, like, shift, change. Like, he turned into the most amazing father, and I decided again, you know, we have a child together, and I want to give this a chance. Like, it was kind of back and forth. Like, we had a really bad times with the addiction and stuff, and then this like wonderful time to where I'm like, this is why it's worth it. Like, it's worth it to try and keep fighting, keep this family together. But it just kept progressing and getting worse. We had to restart the video because somebody came to pick up their kid that was taking a nap. Anyways, when I finally found out that it progressed into a sexual addiction, that's when I decided to separate for sure right away. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. I think like a week or two after finding out, I told him that I would give him another chance if he kind of proved to me that he wanted this family. But it was more definite then because we had already been going through this for years and there wasn't any progress. It was just getting worse, and then the information kept coming out. So I separated after finding out about the sexual addiction, but not finding out about the pornography addiction, if that might make sense. The next question, do you think it started out as a porn addiction? How did you feel when you found out, and how did you cope? Well, do I think it started out as a porn addiction? Yes. How did you feel when you found out, and how did you cope? As I just talked about, I don't really remember finding out about the porn addiction or how that felt. I remember like immediately thinking that I remember feeling compassion, feeling bad for him, wanting to help him through this. I remember wanting to research a lot. That was something that I did right away. When I found out about the sexual addiction, I did not handle that very well. At first it was shock. I remember calling my dad, asking him like, am I allowed to kick him out? Am I allowed to be mad at this? Am I, just like really weird questions, but I was like in shock. And then I went into this like trauma phase. It brought back PTSD from things that had happened not in our marriage, but from my past, and things that had happened earlier in our marriage, and things that I thought I dealt with and I didn't need to deal with, and it was just all of a sudden like dealing with PTSD on top of finding out about the infidelities and stuff. And so I was like shaking, I was crying, I wasn't able to sleep more than 2 hours, I was kind of just depressed, just kind of sitting around. Coping with it was kind of just more research. I had therapists set in place in a support group before I found out about the sexual addiction, so that really, really, really helped me. Is I knew what things that I had to do to help myself get out of it, but also giving myself time, I think, is really important, because there's no way that I could have rushed myself through that process. I kind of just had to say, I have to go through these feelings, I have to validate them, and not take forever and just sit in that and sulk and whatever, but to let that pass and to go through those emotions and just give myself time. So do you want to answer the first part of that question?
It's how it always starts. So yes, it was porn addiction first. Next question. I read on other social media that you have done this from an early age. Why did you choose to get married? Because I thought that's what I needed to help me stop, and I also thought that I was in love, but it was just driven by lust.
What was the main addiction that caused you to decide on a divorce? I talked about this in a previous video before. The addictions were not the only reason, the only deciding factor for our divorce. There was a lot of other things that we may talk about in the future if you guys think that's helpful, that ended up leading to divorce. In the beginning of our marriage, I remember going to a therapist. I didn't even talk about the pornography or the talking to other women because it seemed like such a small issue compared to the money and the other issues. So at the beginning, it seemed like the spending problems were more of a bigger deal, and now I would definitely say that the sexual addiction ended up being the bigger deal and more of a deciding factor for the divorce. Here you go.
After the divorce is finalized, is your goal going to be to kick the addiction and try to get back together with Charlie, or has that ship sailed? Right now I'm trying to kick the addiction, and Charlie is probably not going to want to get back to me no matter how good I do, but it's not my goal to get back together with her if we divorce, because my goal at that point would just be to try and be the best person I can be and try and be the best father that I can be. If she happens to want to try again, obviously I would be completely okay with that, because I don't even want to get divorced in the first place.
Sorry, I was like reading a different question. The next question is, does he still engage in the addiction even with the YouTube exposure, etc.?
Is that for me?
Yeah. I mean, I can't answer that for you. I don't know.
No. Just because we're doing this YouTube thing doesn't mean I'm continuing to indulge in my addiction. I've worked hard to get to where I'm at, and I don't want to throw that all away. So, no, I do not still indulge in my addictions. Cody, going to talk about his experience too? Yes. How did you find out? Is that one for me?
No, I think
That was for you.
so. We already answered that. How did we find out about the addiction? But how did it affect our relationship and our family? Obviously, not very good. Obviously, it didn't do very much good for us because we ended up getting a divorce. Our relationship was really bad because of it. There wasn't any intimacy. There's a lot of times, like I said before, where we weren't able to be intimate.
Do you think a relationship could be good because of this?
Yeah, there is no good outcome from a pornography addiction at all. Like, I'm sorry, I thought that it wasn't an addiction in the first place until it entered into my marriage, and I can tell you, there is no good that can come from a pornography addiction because there are times where you can't physically be intimate with an actual human because of it, right? So there was a lot of times where we weren't able to be intimate. It completely ruined our relationship. Because not even just that, like, when you have an addiction, you struggle with, like, anger and resentment and all these different emotions, especially when somebody tries to stop your addiction or take something away from you. Even if they don't know about it, like, you gain resentment and anger towards them.
People without an addiction will understand it.
Yeah.
And it'll probably be more apparent when I do my experience video. But you use your acting out as a pacifier to cope with stressors of life, which is what I did. I used pornography and talking to women to help cope with my anger and my resentment and my anxiety and my loneliness, my depression. It's what you use to, keep yourself rounded off, I guess. When you take that away, those emotions come out. That's what you have to deal with. That's also what destroys part of the relationship too.
Next question is, how do your families feel about you guys being so open about this? I commend you both. Take care of yourselves. I'll answer on my half and then you can answer on yours. My family, I'm not really honestly sure how they feel about it. I know at first they were probably like, this is kind of odd, this is kind of weird. They seemed a little bit iffy about it. Like when I would try to communicate about it, they'd kind of get quiet or they didn't know how to answer and things like that. Eventually I remember my dad was over at our house and he just said, she's going to talk about it whether we try to stop her or not. At least she's trying to do something good with it. I think now that everything's come out, like my dad said, he was reading through the comments and he watched our videos and he saw the positive outcomes of it and he's seeing how it positively has helped our family and helped other people's family. And I think that now he's really proud of it and it's something good. But at first they were never mad about it, but they were kind of like, are you sure you guys want to do this? Kind of iffy about it. But now my family seems to be really on board with it and see it as a good thing, and I'm glad about that. I think that's nice. It's nice. It's always nice to have somebody on your side, even though it's not.
Why would they be on my side?
No, I mean like about the whole being so open about this, like us doing YouTube. You know, like that's what I'm saying. It's nice to like have somebody on our side, even though it wasn't like expected or needed. Like it's nice to have that. So what about your family?
My family hates it. I got so many emails and texts and stupid Facebook messages from my family saying, you probably shouldn't do this, it's a bad idea to put yourself out there. Think of the only thing my family cares about is what people are going to think about them. They only care about what their image is going to look like in public eye.
Not to like go over what you said, but I don't think that's like necessarily true. Like, I think that they do care about you and they care about your family, but I think that's something that
if they really cared, then why haven't they tried at all to help me with this? Why haven't they tried at all to try and understand what I'm going through or what we're going through, or trying to understand our situation rather?
Well, I think that that's part of why we want to do these videos, not for your family, but to bring awareness. Like, these situations aren't comfortable for people to talk about, especially in like older generations. It's not normal for people to put, their dirty laundry or whatever you want to call it, out for the world to see. It's not. Like, image was really important back then, even like in our parents' generations and our grandparents' generations. Like, image was important, and it's people like to keep themselves looking like they're put together and like everything's perfect and nothing's wrong. And, you know, it's part of that independence of I can do everything on my own, and it got kind of like mixed up in that. And so I think that's part of like us bringing awareness, is that not everybody understands this. Like, they can see the situation as one-dimensional. Maybe it's my fault, maybe it's his fault. Instead of putting the blame where it needs to be, which is on addiction, which is on, you know, all these other issues that people might have. And instead of building something better off of that and trying to support each other, it's easy to hide from that because it makes people feel uncomfortable. Addictions are taboo. They are. Like, it's not comfortable for people to talk about. It wasn't comfortable for us to talk about at the beginning. Like, you felt the same way. You didn't want people to see you in a certain light, or, you know, you would look at other people. There was times when it's like Cody would look at other people and see them in a certain light due to their addictions or their flaws. And it's normal.
That's another thing. That's something else, like, different too. Like, that'll obviously, or that'll come out in my story too. But when you pick out bad things in other people, it's normally because you're, from my experience with my addiction, I would pick out things in other people. Like, we got friends who cheat on their spouses all the time, still doing it right now, and they still deny it. Obviously, I picked that out. I'm able to pick out things in other people that other people aren't able to see because I'm doing the exact same thing. And that's just another part of addiction, is you judge so quickly other people because you want to make yourself feel better or whatever.
Well, we're kind of like going off onto this rant, but basically it's like, it's normal for these things to like make people uncomfortable to talk about, or for these subjects to be taboo, or for us to look like, you know, we're airing our dirty laundry, we're doing this and that, or to judge other people because of the situation. But I think that's why we're trying to bring awareness to this, so that people can see that it's not so one-dimensional. Like, there's so much more to it than just that. So the next question. How was he able to keep the infidelity a secret from you as long as he did? It's kind of hard to... he didn't really keep the infidelities a secret from me as long as he did. The 2 months, I honestly gotta say, I really didn't see that anything was up until that moment that feeling hit me. I really didn't know. So that was... really, I had no idea. After that, every single time, I just always knew. I always had this feeling, a thought, like it would just hit me, and I learned like halfway through the process that I would not be paranoid, I would not ask questions, I wouldn't freak out unless I had that feeling, and if the feeling didn't go away, then I knew that it was real. So every time I would have that feeling, I would know that something was up. I didn't always know what it was, if it was physical cheating or online cheating, you know. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that there's something always wrong, and I would confront him about it. The only way that he kept it kind of a secret is that I would ask him about it over and over and over again, and he would lie, and I couldn't find any proof. So I didn't have the proof to be able to say, yes, for sure, I know you're physically cheating, like, and so it kept it kind of in a secret, but it wasn't really like, I had no idea what was going on, if that makes sense. I mean, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I've never kept a secret from you. Can't keep secrets from you.
That's like one thing that he hates about me, is that like literally every time he walked into my room this morning, so you know, I said more information kind of came out. Like the other night I had a dream about it, and I woke up inside my dream in another dream, and I was like, I know that this happened because my dream told me. And in the dream, Cody was like, you're just crazy. And so I was like, so this didn't happen, like really detailed. And he was like, oh my gosh, yeah. And then I woke up and I was like, okay, I just had a dream inside a dream. Like, I'm crazy, that's not real. Well, then today I'm like, last night I just knew something was up. It wasn't leaving me alone. I couldn't go to sleep. So I texted him. I went to bed, and he walks into my room this morning, and I just like shot up in bed. Was that kind of creepy? Like, I full on just like shot up in bed and looked at him, and I just kind of knew what happened. So he doesn't like it because I always kind of knew what was up, and it was kind of frustrating because how did he engage in it? Prostitutes, webcam, cheating, websites, regular hookup, bars, etc.
My question?
Yeah.
I guess you'll just have to wait until my video comes out.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty much my entire video. How did I engage in it?
That's true. That's true. So Cody will be coming out with his own story, as you guys saw mine. Says in an earlier video, Cody said he was 80 some days on the wagon. Has he been able to continue? Is he still on the wagon or did he fall off? We'll start with that one.
No, I'm still on the wagon.
How many days is it now?
236.
That's good. Also, could you explain spending addiction? Is spending related to sexual addiction, for example, prostitute? I think, so I didn't know that a spending addiction was a problem until I went to one of my groups and the lady kind of said, my husband has like this addiction, this, and spending. And I was like, oh, okay, like, can you explain that to me? And I had always known that Cody had a problem with money, but I didn't really see it as an addiction because I was zeroed in on like the other addiction, you know, the other aspect of it. But it became apparent that every time that he wasn't engaging in the other women or the pornography, that it would immediately go over into spending. It was a trade-off that he would either do both at the same time or be one at another. It was never related to prostitutes that I know of. No, it was never related to anything sexual that I know of, but it would be like different items for the car or the house that would be like big ticket, like $1,000 items when we couldn't afford diapers, just things like that. In the beginning of the video, Cody was at Target and you weren't with him. I remember that in your Q&A video, you mentioned Target being a trigger for you. Is that still a trigger for you and why you weren't with him? Will you be talking more about this? No, thankfully, Target is not a trigger for me anymore. I talked about this in our last Q&A video that Target was kind of equivalent to a bowl of candy, something that shouldn't have triggered my PTSD, but it did. Like I've said before, and I'm going to be talking more about my PTSD later, but my PTSD was not just from this marriage. There's things that happened to me in the past that should have caused my PTSD, and I just suppressed that for such a long time, and it kind of just domino effect once I found out about the most recent infidelity. And so when we went to Target, didn't think it would be a problem. All of a sudden we get to Target, I see the sign, I start shaking, I need to throw up, like I can't go inside, I can't walk, I'm like hyperventilating, didn't know what was wrong. Well, Target was like a place, this is gonna sound so stupid, but it's a place that our family goes to now and used to go to all the time. Like if we were bored, we didn't have anything to do, we'd walk around Target. Like Sparrow loves Target to death. We were there all the time. And that's where
that's where I bought condoms to indulge in my addiction.
Yeah. And how I found out about the most recent infidelity, I looked through his drawers and I found a box of condoms in there. And so that's kind of how I found out about it. Again, I didn't think that should be a thing to trigger my PTSD at all. So I went to Target the next day not thinking it was a big deal, and it ended up doing it, and I just couldn't control that. Eventually I kind of got over that and was able to cope through that. I don't go to the Target where he purchased them from because that kind of stresses me out, but every other Target is fine. Like, I miss Target way too much to keep that being a problem, so I worked really hard to kind of deal with that. Was there ever a time where you were intimate, where you would blah, 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 sorry. Was there ever a time where you were intimate, where you would distance yourself from the intimacy because of his addiction, but comply because you felt like he would find it elsewhere? Yes. Before we got married, I had been in some relationships where I was kind of like, they weren't very good, and so I was in a really bad place after those, and I finally pulled myself out of that to where I was like independent and I was strong, and I felt like I had healed from those relationships and the things that I had been through there. And so I felt like if somebody's ever going to cheat on me or make me feel like this, I'm just going to walk away. I'm not going to take that. And for a long time I did, and it didn't happen all the time. There's a lot of times where I was like, I don't care. But there were a lot of times in our marriage where I would comply to doing things that I really didn't want to because I felt like if I said no, he would right after go and find it somewhere else. He never once made me, tried to make me feel like that. He would always tell me that it was okay, that I didn't have to, that it wouldn't make him feel that way, that it wouldn't bother him, blah, blah, blah. Now that was never true because that would always end up resulting in him doing what I was afraid of if I said no. But he never tried to make me feel like that. I kind of just took that on myself. And I think that that's really normal with this addiction for those women. But if you are someone who is struggling with this, it is not your fault. Do not do that. Like, don't make you feel like you have to do something for somebody if you don't want to. They're going to do this. If they're an addict, they're going to do this whether you give it to them or you don't give it to them. So don't do something that you're uncomfortable with just because you want them to stick around. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately, and it doesn't make you feel any better. It doesn't make them feel any better. So it really sucks. It's not something that I would ever want to do again, but yeah, that is something that I struggled with and something that I went through. To Cody, how did this addiction start for you? What one situation may have begun this journey, and how old were you? If you want to just say your age, and we'll leave the rest for your story.
I was young. The rest will be in my story.
Yeah, this is kind of like the whole beginning of his story, so I guess we'll leave that. Another one on age. How did you discover the full extent of the sex addiction? I feel like I literally just discovered the full extent today. But a lot of it came out, it was a really trickle effect. He never was kind of open and honest about the full extent of it. I always felt like there was something more, and I never felt at peace with the answers that he had given me. Like, I felt like there was more, and I would ask questions, or I'd say something that I thought felt right, but I didn't have any proof for that. So I discovered the full extent through just, I would go to him and pose it as, I know this, is it true? Or I'm feeling like this, is it true? Ask him questions. Usually we get like 10 to 30 lies, and then eventually a half-truth would come out. I know a lot of people do these things called full therapeutic disclosure, which is where you go with your spouse and your therapist, your husband's therapist, and the wife's therapist, so on if it's flipped. And then you go and you take a polygraph test, and everything comes out. They write it down in the disclosure letter. You have the timeline, everything they've done, and your therapist is right there to go through it with you so that you can take on that trauma. They say that this is really helpful because trickle effect. Information can come out from other partners that your spouse has been with. Other information can come out by, something that they've left behind, or a feeling like I get, just little things. So other information will always come out, and it's a lot less harmful if you get it out all at once so that they can deal with that trauma once other than multiple times. So if that's something that you guys are struggling with and something you want to do, therapeutic disclosure is probably the best way to go. I've had friends who've done that, and they have said that's probably the most helpful thing. We've been going through a disclosure for literally our entire marriage, and I think it might have just ended today. So I would not say that that's the best way to go about it. If someone has a sexual or porn addiction, couldn't it be a little dangerous for the kids? The answer is yes. Of course, that's different for, I don't know if that's different for everybody, but at first I didn't think that this addiction could hurt anybody, but there are STDs, there's different kinds of pornography that's not okay, there's your kids walking in on it, you kind of ignoring your kids because you're indulging in your addiction and don't notice. Like, there's a lot of different things that can be dangerous for the kids. For us specifically, there was a situation where I felt like the kids and myself were not thought about, and we were put in a dangerous situation, which is one of the reasons why I decided to walk away, is because the danger that I felt the kids were put in. Now the kids are completely safe, 100% safe. I feel comfortable leaving them with him, and so on. But yes, this addiction can be dangerous for the kids. Do you guys live with his parents? I think we kind of answered that earlier. No, we have our own house for right now. We're trying to fix things up in the house so we can sell it, so we can move and be out of the same house, but right now we're still living in the same house together. How did the addiction cause your C-section? So I went into labor with Bodhi early on. I was in labor for a couple days, and it was like a really kind of a hard thing. I was really stressed out. I was going through a lot. We got divorce papers, like 3 weeks before Bodhi was born, but we decided to just say, like, we're going to put this on hold. We need to push it off. We don't have family in town. We don't have anyone to support us. We had a random lady from church come and watch Sparrow, so we didn't have a support system. We decided we needed to kind of help each other out and be on the same page throughout the birth and the labor, and then deal with it. So I was really stressed out. I went to labor early. when I was in labor with Bodhi, I started to have some symptoms maybe of an STI or an STD. They didn't have time to run the test to come back. My labor was about to break, and if the water broke, it was a little bit more dangerous for the baby. Sorry, so we gotta do this really quick. We're gonna finish with this question and we'll just do a part 2 of the Q&A. So if your question wasn't answered in here, just hold tight. As I was saying, I was kind of having symptoms of maybe having an STD or an STI. Every time I say that, I think about the car. It's you. Anyways, we didn't have time because my water was about to break. They had multiple doctors that they called to discuss what was the best option. They asked us. Ended up having to have a C-section. Obviously, I'd have the STD or the STI due to the addiction, and had the C-section. The test ended up coming back negative, unfortunately, but that's not something that we wanted to risk because Bodhi could have been born blind or having the problems of whatever complications that would have come with. So that's why we ended up doing that. It was a little bit more risky. Like, it was, a lot of the signs were really pointing to it. It was really scary, but ended up being fine. So that's the last question we're going to answer today. We have a lot more questions. Like I said, if we didn't get to ours, hold tight. It'll be in the next video. But I hope that this cleared up some of the questions and things for you guys that you've been asking. So Cody's story will give any idea of a timeline of when you might want to have yours out. You don't have to give like a specific date, but burping. I think that I put out my story when I felt like I was ready, and I think that that's really important. So whenever he feels like he's ready to do that, that's when it will come out. Again, if you guys have any more questions that weren't answered in this video that you haven't asked before, leave them down below. We'll have a second Q&A video probably in a week or two. So I'll give you guys a date on that coming up soon. Thank you for watching though. I hope that this, like I said, cleared up some things for you and answered maybe some of the questions that you had. I don't know how to end out a video. What do you say? Come again?
Bye.
Bye.